Thank you very much for the introduction and for having me here today. I'm very pleased to be joining this panel and to be speaking about fuels of the future. So my name is Daisy Robinson and I specialise in advanced liquid biofuels at Bloomberg NEF. So just quickly, Bloomberg NEF is a strategic research provider covering global commodity markets and the disruptive technologies driving the transition to a low carbon economy. And today I'm going to be focusing on renewable diesel. So firstly, what is renewable diesel? It's an advanced biofuel that is what we call drop-in. Drop-in means that it's chemically identical to fossil-based diesel, so it can replace it 100%. It's compatible with diesel engines without the need for any modification. It's compatible with diesel infrastructure like refueling stations or pipelines. It's even compatible with diesel production in refineries. So refiners can either produce renewable diesel by co-processing some organic feedstocks with their fossil feed, or they can convert their refineries to produce from fossil to 100% renewable product, which many refiners are starting to do, but I'll get onto that a bit more in a moment. Renewable diesel can also be further processed to make jet fuel, renewable jet fuel. There's a lot of focus on these drop-in fuels at the moment as heavy-duty transport like trucking or aviation have fewer options to decarbonize or reduce emissions as they are much harder to electrify. And a note on what renewable diesel isn't. It is not the same as biodiesel. The two products often get confused with one another, but they're very different. So they do have some similarities though, the main one being that they're both made from the same feedstocks. So that is vegetable oils or waste fats and greases like used cooking oil. But the production process is very different. Therefore, so is the end product. And importantly, the main takeaway is biodiesel is different because it has a different chemical structure to diesel. So it can only be blended in small amounts to avoid performance issues or engine damage. Whereas on the other hand, renewable diesel, which is what we're talking about today, can replace fossil diesel 100%. So this is what the market looks like at the moment. These 5 companies here highlighted account for 80% of production capacity. So as you can see, it's highly concentrated, and it's also quite concentrated in Europe. But this is what the top 80% looks like in 2024 based on announced projects. And around half of these projects were actually announced last year. In 2020, the project pipeline for renewable diesel capacity doubled. So why was 2020 such a pivotal year? Well, we all know that 2020 was an extreme year for many reasons, but for refiners, particularly in the US, it was the year when the production of biofuels started to actually be a very attractive option. On the one hand, the COVID-19 crisis has really weighed down on refining margins as demand for transport fuels was hit very hard from travel restrictions, which are still ongoing in many parts of the world. Even US margins, which historically have been some of the highest refining margins in the world, sunk down to just a few dollars per barrel. And then on the other hand, renewable diesel has been artificially buoyed, if you will, by several policy mechanisms. This is in the US, where they've got a few different kind of tax credits or biofuel credits going on. And this has really supported the margins on offer to producers and caused this huge divergence between what refiners could make refining fossil fuels versus producing renewable diesel. Policy elsewhere, not just in the US, even markets that don't have necessarily biofuel credits in the same way, has still kept demand for renewable diesel strong in the midst of the crisis and therefore kept the price high. So looking at all the announced projects, we see that production capacity is set to more than triple by 2024 to around 24 million tons. And this is really being led by refiners. As you can see on the chart on the right, over half of new capacity is in the form of refinery conversions. But it's important to note this is the total capacity of the projects, which will also include a cut of lighter products as well as jet fuel. So much like refining, producers kind of end up with this bio crude, which gets fractionated into different products, the majority being the renewable diesel fraction, but there's also some lighter products like renewable naphtha and renewable jet fuel that come into the mix, and refiners have the ability to kind of flex these yields as they see fit. So they can maximize their production of jet fuel if they wish to do so. But we do expect that the majority of this capacity will be focused on the diesel portion for the time being, because the economics to produce renewable jet are not as favorable. Firstly, producing renewable jet fuel costs more than producing renewable diesel, because it's an extra step in the process, and it requires more energy and also more hydrogen, which is expensive. And the second reason, and a very important reason, is that renewable jet fuel has long been overlooked by policymakers, so it doesn't receive the same support as renewable diesel. So while most countries have some form of blending mandate for biofuels on the road, currently only 2 countries have a blending mandate for aviation fuels, and that is Norway and Sweden. And these were only introduced in 2020 and 2021. There are some major policies, like in the US and in the EU, which include aviation biofuels on an opt-in basis, meaning they can earn credits or they can count towards targets, but they're not mandatory. And even where renewable jet fuel is included, it's often at a disadvantage still to renewable diesel. So this is an example in California in the US, and California has its own state level policy, as well as the national US policy. So in California, renewable diesel and jet fuel both generate RIN credits, and they also generate LCFS credits, but renewable diesel generates more than its jet counterpart, just because of the way the policy mechanism is set up. And the difference in those incentives stacks up to 24 cents per gallon in favor of diesel. And while this doesn't sound like much, that's about $10 per barrel. So it's pretty massive if you think about it. So if you're a producer and you have the option of maximizing your renewable diesel or maximizing your renewable jet fuel, you're going to choose renewable diesel. And this is a problem, because we expect that jet fuel demand is going to double by 2050, which means that emissions from aviation are going to double as well, unless we find a way to reduce the emissions of these flights. But the good news is that policymakers are now becoming increasingly aware of this problem, and more policies are being expanded or introduced to cover aviation. The ones highlighted in these boxes are just a couple of examples, but there are a lot more that are in the making. So in our example in the US that I talked about just now, that difference in incentive in favor of diesel will lessen by 2024, which will put them on more of a level playing field. And they're also considering a new policy mechanism at the moment, which would be specific to aviation. In Canada, they're looking to introduce a national clean fuels program, which would start in 2022. And at the moment, they're talking about including aviation or domestic aviation as a mandatory part of this policy instead of just opt-in. And that would actually be a world first for this kind of policy. And then when you look at Europe, there are lots of different member states that are going down the blend mandate route, with quite a few of them coming into force in the next couple of years. So now the world is paying attention and capacity is continuing to expand. We expect that renewable jet fuel, its role could potentially grow really rapidly and get to work starting to reduce emissions of aviation very soon. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you very much for listening, and look forward to the discussion. I'll now pass over to the next speaker.
Thank you, Daisy. I think there's a lot of learning even for people like us who have been in this field for the last 20 years. It was a great learning. And I'm sure that all the listeners have benefited from it, and there will be a lot of questions to you, and especially India has lots to learn in this direction. That it's just not biogas, but also biofuel, and that this jet fuel is a great potential. Thank you very much. So our next speaker is Bharadwaj Kumavaru, and he's the Executive Director of the World Energy Association. WBA is the leading global association promoting the sustainable development of bioenergy. WBA covers all sectors, including liquid biofuels, solid biomass, and biogas. While representing, he has been leading the association for the past 3 years in executing activities, including projects and collaborations. And he is a chemical engineer himself and has a master's degree in sustainable energy system. He has also interest in life cycle assessment, data analysis, sustainability. So, Bharadwaj, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Deepak, for the wonderful introduction. Of course, first thing to do is to share my screen. I hope the presentation's visible. Just flag if you don't see that. But yes, first of all, thanks to Gaurav and his team at the Indian Biogas Association for setting this wonderful panel together. And it's only now I suddenly realized the topic, the fuels of the future, following the Fridays for the Future and so on. I think it's a very interesting, impactful topic. And I've been, the idea for me now is to give a very brief global picture on the development of the liquid biofuel sector. So I'm not going to touch much on biogas. And so as pointed out, my name is Bharadwaj Kumavaru. Even though I'm very Indian, but I've been living in Sweden for about 9 years now. So very good morning from a very cold and snowy Stockholm to everyone who's joining us to this session. Briefly about WBA, as pointed out, the Secretariat is based, of course, in Stockholm, and our mission is to promote the sustainable development of bioenergy on a global level. We've got members from more than 65 countries, including companies, associations, and researchers, which we are very proud of, as you can see from the map on the left. And we've got various activities undergoing, all related, of course, to bioenergy, including publications, events, and international collaborations. More information is, of course, available on our homepage. So for this brief 10-minute intervention, I initially thought I could talk just 3 things. Number one, where are we right now? Where do we need to go, and how do we get there? What are the challenges and opportunities for us to get there, looking at the liquid biofuel sector? So just briefly, where are we right now? Some of you may be aware already, but this is the energy matrix globally. So this I've taken from our recently published statistics report. 80% of the energy consumption still comes, of course, in the form of fossil fuels. Renewables, we keep hearing a lot about the penetration of, for example, solar, wind, and other technologies in the recent past, but the share has been constant since the start of the century, mainly because even though the development has been very impactful, but it has been met by increasing demand for energy. So the overall share has kind of remained the same. What's sometimes not well known is that bioenergy is and still remains the largest renewable energy source for one of the critical source for meeting on-demand, dispatchable, and sustainable energy for all end-use sectors. So it's not just electricity, but also for heating, for cooling, for transport, for cooking, and so on. So it has a very, very significant impact, and we see that it'll play an important role in the future as well. But in terms of the various sectors where we see the energy demand and the challenges we have, more than half of the energy we use right now in the world is in the form of thermal heat. So that's in whether it's residential or industrial or commercial. Heat is one of the significant demands, and that's where policy has not focused much on. Power, of course, has made a lot of progress in the renewable technologies have made significant progress in the power sector, as you can see on the image on the right. I've taken this from one of our partners, Rent21. But the challenge, of course, remains the transport. It consumes about 32% of the energy, and only 3% of that is renewable. Even though we hear a lot about the penetration of electric vehicles, the share of electricity in the transport sector is still woefully low, and most of it, more than 90% of it, is met by a variety of biofuels, bioethanol, biodiesel, other drop-in fuels, as Daisy has pointed out. So it's the largest renewable energy source, bioenergy in non-electricity sectors, and it has potential to grow further as well. And where are we in terms of liquid biofuels? Total volumes about 160 billion liters. We see steady growth, although COVID has made a significant impact. And I think last year it dropped to about 140 billion liters. But bioethanol still remains the largest fuel. And we see the other technologies and other fuels also making significant impact. But where do we need to go from where we are right now? This is from the International Energy Agency. The Sustainable Development Scenario kind of clearly shows the challenge we have, the significant gap we have from where we are right now at I think about 100 metric tons of oil equivalents to about 300. So about 3 times tripling of capacity is needed to meet the targets, whether it's in the Paris Agreement or the Sustainable Development Goals. And for that, we need, as I think Daisy also pointed out, we need stronger policy support and also strong, significant innovations in supply chains in all technologies. But we see a lot of interesting developments in whether it's in new markets with increasing blending mandates in, for example, Southeast Asia or in China or South America, but also developments happening in various sectors, whether it's aviation or maritime or heavy duty and so on, which are hard to decarbonize and where biofuels are one of the only options available. So where we are right now, and where do we need to go, and how do we get there? The first question we always get do we have do we have enough biomass? Do we have enough feedstock? We did a kind of a fact sheet a few years back, and we looked at different factors. We looked at the forestry sector, we looked at agriculture, we looked at municipal solid waste, we looked at land pattern, land use, we looked at efficiencies of production, and what we could clearly see that there is significant potential to actually triple the amount of bioenergy we currently use right now in all sectors, including transportation. And for that, the most significant increase we see and the potential we see is from the agriculture sector. And that's not just including byproducts and residues, where we hear a lot of news about, say, 2G technologies or cellulosic ethanol, but also we need a significant contribution from dedicated crops. So that's sugarcane or corn and so on. So there is a significant feedstock available to meet the scale-up demand of say, for example, the IEA-SDS. And just to plug in, we've done a couple of webinars also in the recent past looking at this particular topic on agro residues, and we see that there is potential. So that's there. The technology is there, the feedstock's available, but we still feel that one of the biggest impediments is at least in the European Union, is various arguments and focus on other technologies. So, for example. So we see, for example, the talk about e-mobility and electric mobility, and that electric vehicles are kind of the future. But what you see is that even though with significant penetration of EV, bioenergy and biofuels are and continue to play an important role. So it's not what we kind of a key message is that it's not important to look at one technology or one pathway, and that we need all solutions, because the challenge of decarbonizing transport is far significant. And in terms, the second point on the arguments on food and fuel, and that sometimes biofuel production leads to increasing food prices. It's a very simple and easy thing to say, but it's far more complex than that. For example, we did a quick check on what are the increasing changes in food price index from the FAO, and correlated that to crude oil prices. And because you can see there's a significant correlation, because crude oil has a significant impact on the agriculture sector, whereas the biofuel production has been continuously growing at an average annual rate of about 13%. It's not to say that that's the only factor impacting food prices, but it's a very easy and a bit lazy thing to say that biofuel production impacts food prices, whereas it's much more complex than that. And just briefly, a couple of slides on success stories. I think Brazil is one of the examples. where I think the country has the largest renewable energy share around the world. And sugarcane ethanol, I think that's a lesson which India can also take. Is the largest renewable source of not just fuel in the transport sector, but the electricity from biogas as well. And they've then been able to do that with significant support for the technologies and significant policies, long-term stable policies, promoting, say, for example, flex fuel vehicles and promoting the sugarcane industry. And Sweden, where I'm of course currently located, if you see the image on the right, has done exceptionally well in decarbonizing the transport sector. I think the share is about 30%, where the target for 2020 is about 10%. So they've done extremely well. Mainly, I think one key policy there was, of course, a significant price on carbon, which disincentivizes the use of fossil fuels in all sectors. So that's also something which is important to learn. So briefly concluding, the penetration of renewables in transport is kind of very fully low, and that we need significant policy and investment support to meet the scale-up demands for capacities for liquid biofuels. We've got the technologies, we've got the feedstock, but there's still a lack of right policies and incentives. And I haven't touched upon the impact of the pandemic on the biofuel sector, but liquid biofuels is one of the hardest hit sectors last year, mainly because of the drop in transportation fuel demand, but also the drop in oil prices, and any recovery packages being announced by whether it's the European Union or national governments has to help the sector progress, because the challenge is quite significant. So thanks again to the Indian Biogas Association for inviting, and I look forward to an interesting discussion now or later in the session.
Thank you, Bharadwaj. Again, I'm thankful to both the earlier speakers for being very brief, but still giving a lot of information, which I'm sure will lead to a lot of discussions and a lot of questions. Our third speaker is Ankit, and Ankit leads the natural gas related work in ICF India and has more than 11 years of experience in natural gas LNG domain. Prior to joining ICF, Ankit spent 7 years working in GAIL. So I'm glad that all people come from the energy sector, so they have the prior experience. Ankit has worked in different aspects of projects related to natural gas, including all verticals of business in industry, consulting, and industry body. In the natural gas domain in India, he has been related to various development activities and handled complex projects in authorization development of LNG ships in India and due diligence of CGD projects. He also has worked with Federation of Indian Petroleum Industry and Association of Gas and Oil Entities in hydrocarbon sector and has carried out multiple stakeholder engagement in different projects. He has been closely associated towards assessment of natural gas demand in form of CNG in different areas of India. Along with that, he has worked with entities like GAIL, PLL, and World Bank in areas related to use of LNG. So, Ankit, the floor is yours.
Thank you, everyone. So I hope that my screen is visible and the presentation is visible. Okay. Quickly, I think I would start, and briefly, I would like to talk about the fuels of the futures of India. Basically, what directives India has actually laid out, and specifically taking learnings from one of the specific sector, that is natural gas, and how gas has introduced its foray in the transportation sector in India. So quickly about ICF. ICF is a strategic consulting firm. We have 7,000 plus employees across globe. We have a net zero carbon status since 2006. We have been operating in India since last 15 years and is primarily focused in the energy domain, specifically looking at oil and gas, power, renewables, as well as energy efficiency. So quickly going to the future fuels under consideration in India, and what we have seen is are these specific fuels, which is first liquefied natural gas, which is quite suitable for heavy duty transport vehicles, and the infrastructure is planned to have around 50 LNG stations along Golden Quadrilateral. some of the policy incentives like LCNG model to supply gas are enablers for these fuels, which will have an adequate utilization of infrastructure. But OEMs are still to come out with specific models which can support LNG as a fuel. There are a couple of buses which have been rolled out by Tata's, but still, if we look at the transport sector, there are still LNG specific models which needs to be rolled out. Then a closely linked sector to gas is, if we consider LNG and CNG, is compressed biogas, where Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas and MNRE in India have shown a strong focus, with close to 600 letter of intents being issued and 900 MOUs being signed for setting up compressed biogas plants. CGD authorizations in India has been a kind of a success story in last 2-3 years, where more than 136 geographical areas authorization had been given. And these authorization has helped in terms of kind of a feed-in tariff, which could help development of compressed biogas plants. And they have an off-taker who can adequately buy the gas produced through biogas. And there is a possibility of wide-scale adoption with limited changes required at the vehicle side, and therefore it can be very well integrated with the existing network and system which needs to be implemented or is already implemented in India. The next fuel is hydrogen. So fuel cell electric vehicle is one of the technology, but it still requires significant investments, and we see little bit of movement going on in India in this direction. However, what we have seen is an HCNG blending, which definitely requires some kind of an infrastructure to have blending in place along with CNG, and as well as some minor modifications in existing CNG-driven vehicles. But there is a pilot project which has been implemented, and at least 50 buses are on test to ascertain what kind of advantage it can give and whether HCNG can be, hydrogen can be blended with CNG in future. Then we have ethanol, and we have been able to achieve 5% ethanol blending with gasoline, and the government target has been to achieve 10% blending by 2022 and 20% by 2030, which is definitely an important policy initiatives taken by the government. EVs is very state specific in India. Some of the states are focused upon developing charging infrastructure, giving capital subsidies. But still, what we have seen is adoption of electric vehicles, at least in the four-wheeler segment, is very limited. But two-wheelers and three-wheelers have seen a significant amount of vehicle registration across different states in India. For biodiesel, despite higher blending targets, the actual blend rate has been quite low. And what we have seen that the vehicles are compatible, but the major challenge has been towards the inadequate feedstock availability. So quickly going forward, and just I'd like to show some trends around what kind of vehicle growth had been in India, and what we have seen since 2015 to 2019. We have seen a significant growth in the CNG vehicle. Diesel vehicles have shown a very slight growth, and these are year-on-year registrations which I'm talking about. Electric vehicles and hybrid vehicles have shown significant growth, but the base had been quite low. So we see, if we talk about percentage terms, that the number looks predominantly high, but the base is very slow. And this is actually, can be seen from the second chart, where we can see, in case of motor cars or cabs, that is mostly of the passenger vehicles or the light motor vehicles, what has been the trend towards vehicle registration. So what we have seen is that once the emission norms got stringent, there has been a decline in the diesel vehicle sales as the overall share of the total vehicle sales profile, whereas petrol, diesel still have a significant share in the vehicle sales. What we can see is, although gas, CNG vehicles, and CNG is quite a key sector in India, but still the growth has been in the range, the share has been in the range of 5 to 6%. Hybrid vehicle has shown a slight increase, with integration of, giving a better mileage and efficiency is helping out the hybrid vehicles to have more penetration. Electric vehicles still remains low. And however, the story is very different if we look at the states which are where there is an adequate access to natural gas, where we have seen the diesel vehicle sales year on year. If we see the annual registration, it has shown a slight dip. And what we have also seen in case of motor cars and cabs, where majority of the CNG vehicles are driven, there is a significant 14% to 17% share is available of the gas vehicles. And again, hybrid vehicle has shown an increasing trend even in this state. So actually, what I'm trying to convey over here is that most of the time, infrastructure and policies both have been acting as a key drivers for demand. And if you see these charts, what we can see over here is that in the states where there is a significant higher development of authorization of city gas distribution areas and there is an adequate CNG coverage, there is a high CNG penetration as well. If we look at the right-hand side chart, we can see that Delhi NCR, which supports, policy, there is a significant policy initiatives taken over here where the all passenger vehicles, including all taxis and public transport vehicles, should be driven on gas. There is an adequate utilization as well, with each CNG station giving an average of 6,500 kg sales per day, as compared to the other states where, in Uttar Pradesh, we can see that with adequate number of CNG stations available, the sales per CNG station still remains low. Even in Gujarat, where there is a 636 CNG stations, the sales is somewhere in the range of, average sales is somewhere in the range of 3,000 to 3,500 kgs per day. So also what we have seen is that pricing altogether has not been the only factor to push the demand. And taking an example and the time frame of between 2010 and 2017-18, there were certain initiatives which were taken by the government to reduce air pollution and to promote gas. So although there was partial diesel price deregulation, which increased diesel prices, and there was significant increase of CNG price as well during that time frame. Then there was an allocation of domestic gas to this specific sector, which led to a decrease in CNG prices. But still, we see that the growth of CNG has not been adequate in those years. But then eventually, when there was environmental compensation charge, which we call as carbon tax in other countries, for any kind of diesel vehicle trucks entering into Delhi was implemented, what we saw was there was significant increase in CNG sales and a dip in diesel sales. So all in all, what I'm intended to say is that to promote such kind of fuels, less polluting fuels, there needs to be some kind of a policy intervention, which can be either in the form of carbon tax or either in the form of additional cess or levy being implemented for trucks entering into the regions which have higher pollution. If we talk about electric vehicles, so again, the majority share is towards the registration of three-wheelers. However, the two-wheeler actually comprises of only 2.5% share of sales. This is the statistics of year 2020. Although in the passenger car vehicles and the light motor vehicle section, we have seen that most vehicle registration happened in the state of Delhi, Maharashtra, Karnataka, and Kerala. And these are the states where some electric vehicle policies are also have came out, giving some kind of capital subsidy to the end consumer as well. So moving next and talking about new technology fuels, and I would like to bifurcate them into two parts. One is the blended fuels, which includes, let's say, compressed biogas, ethanol, methanol, or HCNG. And then separate is the new technology fuels, which includes like LNG, hydrogen, electric vehicles, or fuel cell electric vehicles. So for the blended fuels, at least the infrastructure is available there, and we can use an adequate existing dispensing infrastructure for fuel use. And typical challenge remains towards adequate production of these and a sufficient blending of them being done with the existing fuels. Whereas with the new technology fuel, the challenge remains also at the OEM side, where what we have seen in case of LNG vehicles, and it has been talked about for last 4 years in India, there is still not significant movement which has happened towards adoption of LNG as a transportation fuel. Also, in case of electric vehicles, have shown some kind of policy and cost reduction support, which as battery cost reduces over the period of time, we may see significant development happening in that way. So, large-scale electric vehicle adoption is a mix of challenges across economic viability, availability of charging infrastructure, reservation of the end consumer with respect to range and anxiety and whether these infrastructure for charging is available or not. Huge investments need, and the solutions are again driven around policy, business models, and as well as grid operation, which one has to keep into consideration whether the grid would be able to support in that direction or not. Same as the
I will request you to shorten down because there are 2 more speakers.
Yes, I have just last 2 slides. So same is the case with LNG, where what we have seen is that the heavy duty vehicle availability and its maintenance and financing of these trucks remains a kind of a challenge for its adoption. And if we talk about the compressed biogas projects, what we see is although the technology identification and mapping is ongoing with involvement of foreign entities getting into arrangements with Indian developers, as well as there is an offtake arrangements getting in place with under the Satat program. What we have seen is that still there are some kind of challenges on long-term financing and high risk perception by financial institutions. I think these risk needs to be mitigated, and a more awareness needs to be created with the financing institution, which can enable these project implementation with probably low cost of financing, which can make this city gas compressed biogas projects more viable and can be very well integrated with the CNG program, which is driven all through in India. So this is my last slide, and thanks for listening.
Thank you, Ankit. Sorry, I had to request you to shorten, but we have other 2 speakers. But again, very, very informative session. Thank you. I mean, even for me, there was a lot to learn. I'm sure there will be a lot of questions after that. I'll invite last speaker, Mr. Stefan Holdorf.
Yeah.
Holdorf, sorry, is an agronomist who has worked in extension service to farmers in Kalmar country in Sweden since 1996. Since Kalmar County is a coastal region of the Baltic Sea with the animal-based agriculture, the focus was to utilize the manure in better way and minimize the eutrophication coming from the agriculture. That led to switch focus, and since 2008, he becoming a consultant on biogas production based on manure. Stefan is helping both individual farmers and large cooperatives, farmers who want to start biogas production and upgrade the biogas to fuel. The base is always manure, but other than forms of organic waste, it is also used. In later years, Stefan is also involved in projects focusing on liquidifying the biogas. Since 2013, Stefan is running his own consultancy company working all over Sweden. Stefan has also written a number of reports of potential of biogas production, both on regional level and more local. Since 2007, he only drives a biogas car as his private car. Since 2018, he is one of the project leaders of the project Biogas Boost, which aims to increase filling stations for biogas and double the amount of biogas cars in Kalmar County. So I'm glad that we have someone who is hands-on, who has done project and is going to talk about biogas, because Gaurav, I think our IBA, Indian Biogas Association, become Indian Biofuel Association, because I think out of 5, we had 4 speakers who talked on gas and other fuel, but I'm glad we are inclusive. So Stefan, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. And you can hear me now?
Yes, Stefan, we can hear you better.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for your kind introduction. I am a consultant and I'm working with biogas from the bottom up, we can say. So I work with farmers especially, but I'm also involved in many projects where societies and municipalities are involved, we can say. So I will just start with this principal picture. I hope many people are aware that biogas is actually not only a fuel, it is a solution to the society, you can say, because everywhere where you have people, as in India, or where you have agriculture, you will have organic waste, for sure. And in Sweden, we are not so many people, but for sure we are at least 10 million, so we produce organic waste here. And we have agriculture. As in my region, it is largely based on animal production, milk, pigs, and also chicken, a lot of it here. So there will always be manure from the animals. And the biogas plant is really a kind of organic treatment plant where you can refine the organic waste, and you will always get two end products, the biogas and the digestate, the which comes out from the biogas plant. And it's more or less as much as you put into it will come out as digestate, but the gas is an extra bonus, we can say. But we always tend to focus on this thing, and of course it's very important. And here is, shall we say, an ideal picture which was made in 2006, and it looks like an individual farmer could have his biogas plant, and he could provide a fuel for cars and for buses. And is this really possible or not? Well, I will come back to that, but still, you see, it's important to have the organic waste, the things from the farms, and of course from slaughtery production and waste dairy production. You will always have some kind of organic waste which you can treat in the biogas plant, and you will have this fuel which is actually a very, very good fuel. And you will have here, what is that? That is the CO2 emissions from these cars and buses goes back to the agriculture. So it's not bringing any new CO2 to the atmosphere. It's just a circular economy, as I said. Everywhere in Sweden, the buses has been really important for the introduction of biogas. And this is in my region, in the Kalmar County. They were very active some years ago and put it was demanded that you must drive the bus on biogas, at least 60% of the buses. And here we have new Scania buses which runs on biogas, and they must show it on the outside that it is biogas in these buses. So I think it's very important, if you start driving on biogas, you should show it so other people know that this is a very good fuel to use. And here's another example. This is, I think, Mercedes have their bus company, and this bus is more for city bus, you can say. So these are excellent examples of good new buses that runs on biogas, and we have very good this thing to show it really to people around, so people knows that biogas is really a fuel that you can use. These are the cars which can be run on biogas. I was very pleased and happy to see that you have a lot of fueling stations in India. And of course, the amount of biogas can increase in these fuel stations. And then you will have very good fuel for cars. And we have, like in my region, we have more or less 100% of the gas which are sold to the cars are biogas. And in Sweden in total, it's about 95% in the mix, which goes to fuels for cars. And of course, this is the driving force for building biogas plants, that you have cars and buses that run on the biogas. And as you said in the introduction, now there is a focus also in Sweden on liquid biogas. So I've listened to the other speakers, and you stress a number of alternative fuels, but liquid biogas I didn't see actually. So it is of course a possibility. It costs some more to liquefy the gas, but when you get it liquefied, you can have a very good fuel for heavy transport also sector. And there is a lot of focus on this. And in fact, where I live, I live in Kalmar, and here we have the factory which is world leader in producing liquefaction units for biogas. But as I said, I work as an agronomist, and I work with farmers. And this is a typical farm. He built one digester first, this farm, and he was so happy with this, so he built another one there. So now he has all in all 1,000 cubic meters of digesters. And this is from the other side. And this is a biogas plant which produces electricity. It's inside this container. He has a CHP which uses the gas to produce electricity. But when you produce electricity, you will always get a lot of heat. And he has no use of the heat. So in fact, he gets quite low efficiency of the biogas into energy. And the electrical prices are normally quite low in Sweden. So it's not so efficient to use biogas to produce electricity in Sweden. And actually this farmer really wants to produce fuel instead, and where you can say 100% of the energy will be used in a vehicle. So this is an individual farmer. This is another example we have in Sweden, a cooperative of farmers which build a big biogas plants together. So these two digesters are 5,000 cubic meter each. Here they have the upgrading unit. And in Sweden, we don't have any gas grid, almost, just a small gas grid on the west coast. So where we live, we don't have it. So you always need to transport the gas in gas containers. It's here. But it's an interesting plant. They produce now about 20 gigawatt hours. And they certainly want to increase this. So they are now aiming to increase it up. And it depends, of course, they must find the market also to sell the gas. But they are, and this is also a very good example because these farmers are really keen on doing things. So other people said no, they will never succeed building a biogas plant, but they did. They wanted to do it, and they did. They're really, really good. And then the question is there another one? Is there anyone who has been doing what I mentioned on the first page? Well, in fact, we have at least one example in Sweden. It's a farm not so far from where I live called Hagelsrum. And they started also to produce electricity in 2012 in this digester and a container outside here. Here's the container with a CHP. They had some real big problems in the beginning, especially with the stirring technology and such things. But they continued and learned a lot. And then they started to realize we really want to improve this thing. The production was about 4 gigawatt hours or something. And then they said we wanted to produce fuel instead for electricity. And then the gas company said, you must produce at least double as much, or at least 7 gigawatt hours. Well, they said, we build another digester. So they did this, bigger one. And they build another tank to receive more manure. This plant is in fact only run by manure so far. On the new digester, they have this top mounted stirring technology, which is much more efficient and much better. And they use only manure, as I said, but they use not only the liquid manure, also the solid manure. So that this is also a very important lesson, I think, for successful biogas production on manure, that you should use everything that you can get, solid residues also, because you get more gas from them. And here they have improved it furthermore. There's always improving the plant, and now they have a nice pond outside it, and they also have electrical light posts. I don't think any other farm has that, but they are really growing and expanding. And what they did now, when they had this bigger production, they must also have upgrading unit. It's here, membrane technology. And here's the compressor building, and here they have those containers for transporting the gas. But then they said, well, it's not enough. We must also build our own filling stations. So they did it. They have now built 4 filling stations here. Here is where the farm is, and in the neighbor small cities, we can say, they have built filling stations, and they have their own gas grid from the farm to the first filling station here. So now this the containers are filled here at this filling station instead. And here is what they are looking, their filling stations. I think it's a marvelous example of what farmers can do if they really want to do things. I say these are the most good-looking biogas filling stations we have in Sweden. So all these 4 filling stations they have built look like this, and now they are building their 5th. And they also realized that they must start doing advertising the biogas. So their own car, you can say, it is converted, so it's driven on biogas. And here it says that our biogas will lower your climate footprint with 128%. That is actually what's happening when you are producing a fuel from manure. You will get lower than 100% reduction. So it's really a really good example of a farm that can and is producing biogas from manure only so far. They have also plans to they are planning to expand, and then they want to receive or find more sub feedstock if possible and produce more. But I mean, this is one kind of example where you can build from bottom and up, and I think there are many similar possibilities in India. And I'm glad to hear there is such an interest in more production, and I guess you will also see to that when you produce biogas, it will not be so difficult to sell it. So I think I stop there.
Thank you, Stefan. I'm glad to see that as you are talking of something with which we started long back. I think Gaurav and me and the company we were working for, we were the first in India to convert, or one of the first in India to convert biogas into bio-CNG. So very happy to see something done long back by us is now taking shape. Our 4th speaker is Mr. S. Sampath, and he is the president and CEO of Samtech Resources. He has more than 39 years of experience in engineering projects and about 17 years of exclusive experience in plastics, packaging, recycling, and waste management. He has 13 years tenure of Bharat BPCL in engineering and projects. He became chairman of Southern Chapter in National Solid Waste Management of India. Also worked as managing director in Green Energy Private Limited. He is actively promoting technologies for municipal waste segregation, biomethanation, waste to energy, e-waste recycling, rapid composting, and offers MSW segregation line from BioEnergy of Finland, power plants from SFS waste. So thank you, Mr. Sampath. I hope that, I mean, as I understand, you're going to talk more concrete about project, because all the 3 projects we talked was more about policy. And I would like also our participants to hear about some concrete projects on the ground. So please take forward. Thank you. Mr. Sampath, the floor is yours. Mr. Sampath, I think you may have to unmute yourself.
Yeah.
Mr. Sampath, can you please start?
Hello. Yeah. So now we were talking about pyrolysis. So this is our focus area as of now. So pyrolysis is the technology to convert plastic waste into fuel. It is what happens in the absence of oxygen. The polymer chains, long polymer chains, are broken into short chains of C1 to C4 and C5 to C23 and above. So we have a C1, C2, C3, C4. We have a methane, propane, propyl, and butane. So when we have a methane, we can. What we are trying to do is that once we have this, we were producing fuel oil and then using the gas for heating. So of late, we are discussing with some of the scientists to produce hydrogen from the gas, what we produce from the non-condensable gas, take out a little bit of hydrogen. We'll come back to that later. So pyrolysis, what we have been doing it. So we are basically, it's like as I started telling that we have a assuming a cooker vessel where you put your material, plastic material inside and add some catalyst and heat up to 450 degrees centigrade. The whole solid will melt and then it will become gas. And that gas is hydrocarbon gas, which will have a condensable gas and non-condensable gas. The one of the, I mean, the best part of the pyrolysis, whatever we are doing, it is one side we are cleaning up the plastic waste which are going to the landfill or the river side or the ocean, and the other side we are also creating a value out of it. And we have, our one of the passion is that we face the challenge of handling any kind of recyclable plastic which are being dumped in the landfill. For example, biomined plastics. We have mountains in every cities. Delhi, we have 18 million. Bombay, Mumbai, we have 10 million. So every place we have millions and tons of dumps are being piled up. And these slowly the biomining will start. From the biomining will recover the plastic. Those plastic can be converted into fuel and fuel to electricity, or you can go into hydrogen. So all the difficult plastics, what we do, and then we have a typical plant looks like this. And if you go to the middle of it, then we feed the material. We have a trommel screen. We take out the inert and stones, and we have the magnetic separator removes the magnet. Then we have a shredder which cuts into uniform size so that you get some homogeneous materials, at least in the size. And then we remove the water by drying it. So we remove the inert, we remove the metal, and we remove the water so that the efficiency goes up. And we feed the material through our patented feeding system, and add some, again, proprietary catalyst and crack the polymers and produce gas. What is condensable, we sell it off, and not condensable, we use it for our own heating. And there is no pollution because the product gas which comes out as a gas comes back and heated around 1000 degrees centigrade, and most of the toxic dies. And in that gas, there is a CH4. So we were eyeing on the CH4 to take out the little bit of hydrogen and see whether how it works. And we are we are in the research or collaboration with some companies, I mean, and scientists. We are working on it. This is some place I have taken. We are feeding the polyurethane foam. We feed them and then get into oil. This video also not working, but this is, we get the oil after processing, and the gas is stored in the balloon and used for that. So when we talk about the hydrogen, after the pyrolysis gas is formed, we take the gas and heat again the gas to about 900 degrees centigrade and convert them into kind of a syngas, and thereby try to do the steam interface to get our hydrogen. So I think on the left side, you'll see how the function of the solid oxide fuel cell, where the anode carries our fuel, and the cathode supplies the oxygen, and the electrolyte charge them and then break the atoms into hydrogen and water, and the water reacts with methane gas and produce hydrogen and CO. So the CH4 plus water gives you about 3 CO. So this is what we are planning to do as one of the alternative future fuels to produce from the waste plastics to hydrogen. This is what we are trying to do. This is what I want to tell you also this time.
Okay. Sampath, have you stopped?
Yeah, I stopped. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Friends, again, thank you all the speakers for keeping the time and for a great presentation. We have a lot of questions here. So first, I think I will give the audience the chance. I too have a lot of questions, but I think we will first let other people speak to you and find out from you, from your knowledge and your this thing. The first question is, what initiative would be needed to provide the needful thrust to promote the biodiesel industry? Which country leads the way in form of a conducive ecosystem for the same? And what incentives and policies are in place there? I think probably Daisy is the person who could answer, but Ankit and Bharadwaj also are most welcome, because in a way also associated with that. So the floor is open for answering the question. Please unmute yourself, whoever wants to speak or answer. Daisy, are you there? Oh, Bharadwaj, yeah. Bharadwaj, are you answering? Please.
Yeah, no. I mean, I was waiting for Ms. Daisy, but anyway, excellent question. I mean, we've talked a lot about biogas and bioethanol. I haven't touched much on biodiesel. I think in our experience, I think it's of course the European Union has been one of the world leaders in FAME biodiesel, mainly because of number one, support for agricultural policies, but also the Renewable Energy Directive has been one of the key drivers for increasing the implementation of production and implementation of biodiesel throughout the European Union. And of course, it's important to differentiate between FAME biodiesel and renewable diesel. Renewable diesel and HVO has seen significant growth, I think, now in Sweden and also in Finland, mainly because of course, support policies such as carbon pricing, for example, in Sweden, which has helped promote the development of biodiesel. Of course, there's significant developments in Southeast Asia as well, whether we talk about Indonesia or Thailand or Malaysia as well. Yeah, I mean, it's quite crucial for biodiesel to develop and support the need for more biofuels in the transport sector, along with bioethanol. So we are pleased EU has done quite well, and we see good policy announcements in Southeast Asia to take this ahead as well.
Thank you, Bharadwaj. I'm glad that you were there, and in absence of Daisy, you could answer. Then I think you answered it to our fullest satisfaction. So thanks. It's good always to have multiple people being able to jump in case someone is or not available. The second question is, how do you feel India is positioned in terms of ease of doing business? I think it's on top of everyone's mind in the field of bioenergy. Do you see huge investments coming into the sector in immediate future, or despite the potential, the market would still take a long time to mature, and thus would require a longer time horizon for foreign investment, that is FDI, coming into the sector? Here again, I think it's again a policy thing, and people who are sitting outside, they have perhaps feel more of the limitations or problems they face. In India are very thick-skinned. We are accustomed to obstacles and we continue to survive. But what do you personally see this as a person sitting outside, and what do investors see? How do investors look at India? So Daisy, Bharadwaj, Ankit, anyone could answer this question. So open to anyone.
Actually, Niti Aayog has allocated something like 175 lakhs crores for ethanol, ethanol economy, and 1 lakh crores for compressed biogas. So, in fact, there is the potential available. The investments are coming. In fact, we are trying to in India. There are a lot of small pilot plants are coming, and I'm sure, though we are a little late, but I'm sure in the next few years we are going to catch up. That's for sure.
Daisy, Bharadwaj, anyone want to chip in and give their view of what do you think as a foreign investor, what are the problems they face coming to India? Because we all know that there is a great potential and the technology has proven. And in spite of government's intervention and IBA's great work of lobbying and getting the policy in place, we still remain at MOU level. So what do you think should be done to accelerate the whole process or the field?
Yeah, so I think in my experience, one of the kind of big barriers to investment is kind of certainty of demand, because and also longevity of policy mechanisms, because in a lot of cases, some of these projects take many years to materialize, and so developers kind of need that certainty long term to be confident in their investment. So in the case of some of these renewable jet fuel projects, as an example, some of these projects, because the technology is very new, some of them have been in the making for up to 10 years to develop the technology. And so, these are very long time spans. And so project developers or investors need to know that, at the end of that, there's going to be policies in place that haven't expired, or there's going to be demand. So one of the kind of mechanisms or ways of shoring up that demand is kind of signing offtake agreements, which is happening in the aviation space for one. And so that kind of brings a lot more certainty to investors.
Yeah. Okay. I think I would also like to draw in experience of Kedia, the chairman of IBA, because he's the one who is like interface between the industry and the government. So, Gaurav, what do you think is government doing us to make the ease of business a bit better? I mean, I think thanks to the lobbying, it has opened up this idea. The whole idea is catching up. But what do you think are the hurdles?
Yeah,
what needs to be done?
That's a very good question. Normally, we always break this down in 3 different verticals: technical, financial, and social. Technical, as we are discussing, more or less many times, if the technology is very new, normally it's costly. So affordability is one of the question mark. And this is where the push-pull concept comes in picture, that government gives a push and the market pulls it afterwards. So from technology point of view, let's assume for the time being that it's already in place, most of the things. And then comes the financial. And financial also, the investor confidence will rise when they see some success story. And success for the sake of success story, the way Mr. Stefan was talking, in fact, the way it is happening in Sweden. So we need to really create the case studies, maybe the demo plant, etc. And that's what the Indian government is right now quite bullish about. They have fixed some basic target, and they are very adamant to achieve this, which is very good. Now coming to the social part, because the foreign investors, they want to de-risk the risk, and the risk which they see, they look for the local partners, project promoters as well. And this is where actually the role of any agency like Indian Biogas Association today in morning, if you heard during the opening ceremony, Invest India was there. It's a government entity. We are shaking hand with them to really bring the confidence of the investor that we are there to keep a check from the social perspective, and the policy also falls in social only, and to look for the right local partner, etc., so that the project really happens on the ground. And putting a project is one thing, especially in biofuel. Running a project is another challenge. So we need so many variables we need to really put together in order to really get the confidence, gain the confidence of the investor. So as Mr. Sampath was saying, that is happening, and that's what we are perceiving on the ground. For example, if I talk about biogas, in Satat, we have got 5,000 plant to come in next 5 years, which is a very ambitious target. But definitely a lot of foreign players are there now, not only just coming with the technology, but also with the money and putting the plant. And hopefully this will be up and running very soon, at least some of the demo plant. And this is how the market evolves. It's not about biogas or bioenergy. This is how any market evolves. You need to gain the confidence of the investor. So Deepak bhai, I'll just try to just summarize in this manner only, that it's happening maybe a little slowly, but for sure concretely.
Thank you, Gaurav. It's good to hear from the Indian perspective and the man sitting on the ground, very much involved. I think this question is perhaps for Ankit. Ankit,
may I say something more, Deepak?
Sorry, Stefan, you want to add something?
As I'm not familiar with the Indian situation and market and so on. But of course, what is very important is that you get the price for the biogas, which is suitable or enough for the production costs. I mean, if you have a huge market for natural gas, and that gas has a low price, and the biogas can only get the same price as natural gas, then it will be difficult if it not covers the production cost of the biogas. So biogas must have a incentive or a price to make it the production that you can earn some money on the production, I guess. I mean.
No, we all agree with you, Stefan. I think that's going to play a very important role if this technology penetrates. It has to find its own sustainable price at which it can compete and exist. The next question. This is perhaps to Ankit. Ankit, the question is that we have spoken about policy, but what do you think? There are some salient government interventions that will probably promote LNG. Especially, what is the future of LNG now that government is also pushing EV, which has become a buzzword? So how do you see LNG going in competition or shoulder to shoulder as a complementary to EV?
Yeah, so I think from our perspective, both electric vehicle and LNG have different markets, have different segments. While EVs are mostly targeting the two-wheeler, three-wheelers and light motor vehicles per se, whereas the LNG is specifically targeted towards heavy commercial vehicles. I mean, with weight carrying capacities of, let's say, 30 plus tons, 40 plus tons, because it makes more sense when there is a cryogenic kit being implemented in that, and an additional capital cost of around 10 to 12 lakhs wants to be recovered. I think the question remains is that considering the current taxation regime of diesel and petrol, how long that taxation will hold, and if LNG enters into the market and government does not start putting up that additional excise and higher state VAT on LNG as well, because that can actually derail the entire concept. So that taxation differential should remain. That can eventually help in growing the LNG market, at least in India.
Thank you, Ankit. I think the Gaurav, this is a point which we need to take up to government to make sure that technology is evolving, is not curbed at the very early level itself because of not having that differential. The next question, I think I do not know whom it is addressed to, but it does address a very important question. What are the reservations the farmers typically have in accepting organic and natural fertilizers against synthetic fertilizers? Because many in India confuse themselves when they think biogas is just a biogas technology. But we, having worked in the field of biogas, we know that very often the income from biogas plant, the sale of fertilizer is perhaps equal, if not more. But now, how can you make it really viable? It means what would be the price, and how do farmers accept organic fertilizers, and what price differential are they willing to pay for a better organic fertilizer? Again, it's open to anyone, but our Gaurav, perhaps you as IB, a person, could also talk a bit more about it, because I think we were very instrumental, and Dr. Shukla was one of the key men who said, it's not a biogas plant, it is biogas and fertilizer plant. So it will be very interesting to hear about the perspective now.
In fact, just before this session, the last conference session was talking about biofertilizers specifically, and we were trying to cover the end-to-end thing. But biofertilizer for sure, especially when you talk from Indian perspective, we talk about biogas fertilizer plant. It's not just biogas plant, and especially when you are considering, let's say, organic fraction of municipal solid waste, or you are considering agricultural waste, or cow manure, etc. So anyways, in all these cases, when you are making biogas out of it, you are getting fertilizer or bioslurry. In the past, what has happened many times, the undigested substrate went to the field, and farmers all the time they had this hesitation because of the high acidity in the soil. And now last year itself, what we could get from the government of India, from FCO, in fact, that we have got the technical specification in place now as far as the bioslurry is concerned, or the fertilizer coming out of the biogas plant is concerned. So that is in place. Now coming to the financial part of it, how can we really do that? So in India, there is a mechanism already in place. They call it market development assistance, and that is Indian rupees 1.5 per kg. And as I told you, the dry matter, etc., is already in place. So I'm not going in that intricacies, but nevertheless, this is already in place for the city compost. And at this moment of time, we are trying very hard that we get such kind of support from the government. Again, it's a push-pull thing that we push this thing in the market, and the result itself will speak, volume, and the market will pull it. And I would say, Deepak bhai, right now in market, people are able to sell it for as high as 10 rupees per kg. Of course, again, the technical intricacies we need to talk about. We can talk about the PROM as well, phosphorus-rich organic manure. So again, it's a demand-driven thing. Locally, maybe you have more demand for the nitrogenous fertilizer. Let's say if you are in the tea garden estate, and if you are in some other state, if you have some other requirement. So I think it's also very much a locally demand-driven thing. But coming back to your question of this financial support from the government side, so that's what we are right now looking for, this 1.5 rupees per kg from the government side, because they already have one such kind of policy in place. So it will be easier for them to extend that instead of really going into the argument again, the why and how much and how to channelize it. So that's the position for the time being. But definitely based on the data which we'll get more and more, we will be able to further comment on it. So that's a scenario as far as the India is concerned.
Thank you, Gaurav. I don't have enough time. There are two more questions, so I will again look for a quick answer. One is a question for myself. My experience has been that the failure in technology or biogas technology, or why it's not moving fast, is perhaps the supply chain. I think technology, as you said, is proven. Finance is coming because there is a government incentive and support system in place. Socially, people are accepting biogas more and more. But supply chain still remains a big challenge. Whenever when you want to put up a big plant, bio-CNG plant, how do we ensure legal compliance where people enter into agreement and supply the raw material and not sell it to someone else? Is there anything happening on that front?
So I can just comment from our side. So again, if I talk from Indian perspective, India is a relationship-driven society. It's not typically system-driven society. Of course, system has to be in place. So I don't think you can really enforce something too much legally in order to bind people. The one thing which we can definitely do as far as the raw material suppliers are concerned, we can think to model the whole plant based on the symbiotic relationship. So basically, the supplier becomes your stakeholder or maybe shareholder in some way when you think about putting any such business entity. That is point number one. Point number two, we are also thinking about coming out with this biomass platform or exchange. In fact, a lot of study is going on at this moment of time. IBA is a part of this study as well. And that can answer this kind of question for the future. But again, this can also happen in a very decentralized fashion, because biomass really cannot travel too long because of its intrinsic low density, so-called. Yeah? And apart from this, we can think of many innovative model. We tried this Gobar Bank, in fact, where people used to come to us. Yeah, with the.
Gaurav, we are losing you.
Yeah, you're losing me. Okay, can you hear me now? Hello?
We hear you.
Okay, I'm sorry, we'll have to cut down a bit here. The last question is for Mr. Sampath. What are the constraints for pyrolysis technology?
No, pyrolysis technology, we have, I think so far we have done about 6 or 7 of them. Basically, the inconsistent material quality is the main constraint. And every time the feedstock changes, then we have to play around with the different catalyst. Otherwise, now more or less we are settled down.
Okay. I think there may be many more questions. For all those who are still have any questions, request you to write to IBA. IBA is open 24/7, always willing to answer, involve you, guide you, train you. Again, Gaurav, Dr. Sukla, the whole IBA team, Vishal, Abhijit, Ismit, Kavita, Srinivas, thank you very much for this great effort. And of course, to all the great speakers, Stefan, Daisy, Ankit, Mr. Bharadwaj, and Mr. Sampath. Thank you very much for sparing your time and educating us and our party. All the best to you all. Thank you. Jai Shri Krishna.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.